And then, so that's a possible secondary chapter to use. Here is a primary chapter to use of the passing of the firstborn. This is autobiographical, so this actually, happens to Du Bois. So he talks about this very tragic event in his life. What I just want to point out here is he's talking about sort of this wonderful moment, the birth of his child, and then he will talk about this terrible moment, the death of a child. And this is really highly dramatic stuff that he's talking about. And he talks about it, he writes about it in a very sort of classic dramatic way. Okay, so I think you'll recognize, from movies that you've watched, novels that you've read, right, how it's sort of framed in a classic type way, in a universal type way, right? So anyone would can understand what he's talking about here, right? Parent, having a child born and then having that child die, right? So that's a universal thing. And then what he's going to thread into this is the very particular historical aspect, which makes it unique, right? Which makes it unique to African American experience and unique because of this idea of double consciousness, right? So just pay attention to the story that you know, right, and then the story that you don't know, okay? So in the way he tells it, right? And this is, really where, sort of begins, right, as he looks into his newborn child's eyes and he makes this distinction between brown and blue, right? And he gets into the veil and other stuff like that, okay? So very short, but very, to the point. Chapter 12, you don't really have to worry about that. Feel free to read it. But Coming of John is another primary chapter you might want to work with, right? So again, this is a very standard tale. It's a doppelganger tale, a double tale, right, of two Johns. One's African American, one's Caucasian American, right, or European American. They grow up in the same town, right? They both have educational experiences or educational journeys, right? So they leave and then they come back, right? And so it's two tales that are told with an intertwining that goes on, right? And a very sort of tragic set of circumstances that go on here, right? And again, another double consciousness story, which really has this sort of tragic double bind mechanism going on with it. Okay, so either either the passing of the firstborn or the coming of John would be your primary chapters.